the wound that made you grow. There are pains you can't put into words. They don't leave bruises, they don't break your bones, but they shatter something even more profound, your trust. Maybe someone left without warning, maybe they lied, used you, disappeared quietly, or worse, made you feel like you were the problem, and then you stayed, alone, with questions that had no answers. You kept replaying in your head the things they said, the silence that followed. That moment they made you feel invisible, worthless, and the most painful part, you never got the chance to end it. No apology, no explanation, no closure, just you and the thoughts echoing in your mind. Why did they do that to me? This is the moment when many people fall apart. They fall into anger. They look for revenge. They try to prove their worth to those who never truly saw it. But not you, not today. Because today, we're not talking about how to strike back. We're talking about how to rise, in the Stoic way. Stoicism never promised you a life without pain, but it teaches you something even more substantial, the power of mastering yourself. When Marcus Aurelius was betrayed, he didn't get angry. When Epictetus was mocked, he didn't retaliate. When Seneca was forced to die, he didn't beg. They chose something greater than revenge, courage, integrity, and total self-control. And that is what you're about to learn today. Not how to make them hurt, but how can you reclaim your peace so profoundly that they can no longer reach your mind. They thought you would break, you'll become unbreakable. They hoped you'd scream, you'll respond with silence. They believed they could live inside your head forever, you'll quietly erase their presence for good. This is the most stoic way to destroy those who hurt you, not with rage, not with revenge, but with a level of peace that paralyzes everything they once tried to break inside you. So if you've ever been abandoned, betrayed, used, or broken in silence, stay. Because what you're about to learn is not just how to move on, it's how to be truly free. Let's begin. Not until you can walk away calmly and decisively, before you can rise above without reacting. You need to understand one core truth. Reaction is not the same as resistance, and silence does not mean weakness. In the next part, we'll dive into something most people never realize: the difference between reacting out of emotion and responding with self-control. Because only when you learn how to master yourself can you take back the power you once gave away. We begin with that right now. Reaction versus resistance, the difference that leads to freedom. When someone hurts you, betrays you, or walks away without explanation, what's your first instinct? You want them to know how much it hurt. You want them to feel the emptiness, the anger, the silence they left behind. And in that moment, emotion takes over. You type out long messages. You argue with them in your mind. You picture the perfect confrontation. You wait, not to understand, but to retaliate. But this is where Stoicism steps in. And this is where inner freedom is born. Reaction is instinct. Resistance is woundedness. Most people operate like this. Someone hurts them. They react. They do something to return that pain. They say, I have to do something. They can't treat me like that and walk away like nothing happened. But that's not a strength. That's emotional slavery. You're not acting because you choose to. Your pain is controlling you. You react to soothe your ego. You resist regaining a sense of fairness. But you're giving them even more control over your mind. What did Epictetus say? We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them. You can't control their actions, but you can always control your response. And that is where freedom begins. The Stoic response, intentional silence. The Stoic is not indifferent. They refuse to be pulled into chaos. When insulted, they don't rush to respond. When betrayed, they don't rush to expose. When left behind, they don't scream for answers. They pause. They observe. They ask themselves, is this within my control? If not, they let go. Not out of weakness, but because they know an uncontrolled reaction is the fastest way to lose yourself. Resistance, a disguise for unhealed wounds. There's something dangerous you need to know. Resistance often wears the mask of justice. But underneath it, obsession, unhealed pain, and a deep dependence on the one who hurt you. You try to look fine just so they feel guilty. But let's be honest, If you need them to see it, you're not fine. True strength doesn't come from showing them. It comes from no longer needing them to see anything at all. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the rock against which the waves continually break, and it stands firm." Be the one who doesn't react, not because you're numb, but because you choose your self-worth over momentary emotion. You don't need to react to prove anything. You need self-control to protect your inner peace. In summary, emotional reaction is false control. Emotional resistance is a leak of energy. Only a selective, conscious response is true power. The one who hurt you doesn't need to see your anger. They need to see you disappear from their emotional orbit. And that begins the moment you take back control of your reaction. In the next part, we'll go even deeper. How do you break their emotional power without saying a single word? No resistance, no retaliation. Just a level of peace so strong that they can no longer find the version of you that once got hurt. That's stoic power, and we're going to uncover it next. Breaking others with peace. Here's a truth most people don't want to admit. Not everyone deserves your reaction. And sometimes your silence is what shatters them. When someone hurts you, they're often waiting for something. They want you to blow up. They want you to break down. They want proof that you're still hurting, because that gives them power. But what if you don't react? What if you stay calm? What if you walk away quietly, with a heart that holds no grudge? That's when their power dissolves. This is how Stoics break people. Not by yelling to make them understand. Not by striking back to make it fair. Not by creating a battle, but by stepping away from it entirely. You don't break them, not with weapons, but with the realization that they no longer affect you. Peace is the most terrifying response. The Stoics believed you can't control others, but you can control whether they still have access to you. Your peace is the shutdown of every tactic they once used to manipulate you. They can no longer trigger you. They can no longer live rent-free in your mind. And that confuses them, scares them, even angers them. Because in that moment, you reclaimed what they once held, your heart and mind. Seneca wrote, "Nothing is more powerful than a soul who refuses to react to foolishness." This is not indifference. This is inner protection, refusing to get dragged into emotional mud. You're not cold, you're awake. Peace is a weapon when you choose silence with intention. You don't need to strike back. You only need to stay silent with purpose, reason, and depth. That silence is not an escape. It's a conscious choice. I don't respond not because I can't, but because you no longer deserve my energy. Break them without breaking yourself. When you retaliate, you drop to their frequency. You lose yourself to give back what they gave you. But when you remain calm, you stay you, whole, unshaken. And that alone keeps them from ever touching you again. The quiet rise, a victory without an enemy. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to show them. You only need to become so peaceful, they no longer know how to reach you. You don't need to make them regret. They'll feel it. When your silence lasts longer than any sentence ever could, when is it enough? When you no longer wake up with them on your mind. When you no longer need closure. When you stop needing them to understand. When you can smile without bitterness or force. That's when you've truly broken them without breaking yourself. So how do you stay in that state? How do you keep yourself from sinking into emotion whenever it appears in your mind? How do you not react but remain unshakably strong? In the next part, we'll explore a core Stoic principle: emotional self-control, the most dangerous weapon you possess, and how to wield it like a silent warrior. Emotional self-control, your most dangerous weapon. There's a quiet power. No one sees it, no one measures it, but it's what keeps people from controlling you ever again. It's called emotional self-control. Why are emotions so easily manipulated? Because we are wired to react. When someone insults you, you want to fire back. When rejected, you want to prove your worth. When betrayed, you want them to regret it. That's a natural reflex. But Stoics don't live by reflex. They live by awareness. What does Stoicism teach about emotions? It's not about suppressing emotions. It's not about pretending you don't feel anything. It's this: feel it, but don't let it control your actions. Emotions are visitors. They come, stay for a while, then pass. You don't have to shut your heart, but you shouldn't let every feeling drag you around like a puppet. Epictetus once said, "No one can hurt you unless you allow them to." People can do cruel things. But if you stay angry, bitter, endlessly hurt, you're the one continuing the pain. You're giving them a second power. The power to live in your mind, even after they're gone. Emotional self-control is your strongest shield. Imagine having an invisible armor. When disrespected, you don't need to prove anything. When underestimated, you don't need to argue. When abandoned, you don't chase. Not because you feel nothing, but because you choose calm over chaos. You choose to protect your mind over demanding justice. You choose peace over needing to make them see. True power doesn't come from your reaction. It lives in the pause between pain and action. The space where you ask yourself, is this worth reacting to? Do they still deserve my energy? What do I lose if I stay silent? What do I lose if I react? Stoics don't rush to respond because they know every reaction is an investment of your life force, and not everyone deserves that investment. The more easily you get angry, the easier it is to control you. All they need is a trigger, a sharp word, a calculated silence, and you explode. You react, you lose control. At that point, you're no longer running the game. You're playing on their board, by their rules. Emotional control removes you from that board. No longer pulled in, no longer controlled. Your silence disorients them. When you don't react, they worry. When you stay silent, they're confused. When you remain calm, they lose their grip. Because manipulators thrive in chaos. When you stop fueling the game ends. You don't need to win over anyone. You only need to win yourself. People will say what they want. You can't control them. But you can do something far more powerful. Don't let them control you. You become someone who can't be baited, can't be led, can't be manipulated by emotions. And that is the most beautiful form of revenge. So once you've mastered your emotions, what's the next step? Letting go. Not letting go of emotions, but releasing the things that no longer deserve space in your heart. In the next part, we'll go deeper into a core Stoic skill, detachment, letting go without losing yourself. And why is letting go the right way, the first step to true freedom? Detachment, letting go without losing your power. Letting go, it often sounds like something the weak do, but in truth, only the strong can let go without falling apart. Because letting go doesn't mean you no longer care. It means I've felt enough, learned enough, and grown enough to release what no longer feeds my soul. Letting go isn't giving up. It's setting yourself free. You don't let go because you lost. You let go because you finally understand. Clinging to the past doesn't change it. Holding on to someone who's already gone only drains you. Trying to understand someone who refuses honesty is a dead end. Detachment isn't about freezing your emotions. It's the skill of someone who knows the value of inner freedom. The Stoics didn't erase emotions, they managed them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You can keep a kind heart even while walking away." You don't need to become cold, you need to become clear. You can still love without clinging. You can still care without losing sight of yourself. You can still feel pain without letting it define your worth. Emotional attachment is a double-edged sword. When you cling to someone who hurt you, you'll explain things they never asked to understand. Forgive them before they even apologize. Keep the door open, even when you're the only one waiting. Detachment cuts that cord, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Letting go is about reflecting inward, not blaming outward. You can't control how they hurt you, but you can control whether they still occupy space in your mind. The question is no longer, why did they treat me like that? But instead, what was I meant to learn from this? What made me hold on for so long? What boundary did I ignore within myself? Detachment is resetting access to your heart. No one gets access to your inner peace unless you allow it. And if someone has disrespected your trust, manipulated your emotions, or taken you for granted, You have the full right to revoke access, quietly, calmly, clearly. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. I'm pulling my energy back because I deserve peace. Letting go is the silence of an awakened soul. You don't need an apology to move forward. You don't need closure to close the chapter. All you need is a decision. I've learned what I needed, and I choose to move on without carrying this wound. Signs you've truly detached. You no longer need them to understand you. You don't hope they come back. You don't wait for their apology. You don't hate or love, you feel free. And most of all, you stop wondering, do they still think about me? Because now you realize the real question is, what do I think of myself? The final mindset of the Stoic. If someone leaves, they teach you how to stand alone. If someone hurts you, they teach you to reset your boundaries. If someone doesn't understand you, they help you understand yourself more deeply. You don't let go because you're giving up. You let go because you're returning to yourself. But if letting go is the first step, then forgiveness is the step that leads you to true freedom. Not forgiveness to fix things, but forgiveness to free your heart from the weight. In the next part, we'll explore how to forgive without going back and why that's essential for your most profound healing. Forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. Forgiveness, one of the hardest words to truly understand. It is even harder to practice when your heart is full of cracks. Common mistake about forgiveness. Many people think forgiveness means letting them come back, making peace, forgetting everything that happened. But the Stoic doesn't think that way. They don't forgive rebuilding the old. They forgive so they don't have to carry the burden into a new journey. Forgiveness is an act of freedom, not weakness. Forgiveness doesn't mean you're saying, what you did was okay. It means you're saying, I refuse to let it keep hurting me. It is a choice not to hold on to resentment in your mind, because you know this truth. Long-term anger doesn't burn them, it burns you. Seneca once wrote, anger is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. If you're still hurting, still want revenge, still need them to understand, then you're still bound. You are not free. You're still living in reaction, not awareness. The Stoic forgives, but does not repeat. They don't go back to the one who betrayed them. They don't reopen the door that was once destroyed. They free themselves from carrying the anger. Forgiveness is telling yourself, I deserve peace, and I won't let anyone continue to control my inner world, even after they're gone. You don't need an apology to forgive. It sounds like a paradox, but it's true. You can still forgive without hearing the words, I'm sorry. Because forgiveness doesn't require them. It's a gift you give yourself. You're saying, I choose healing instead of waiting for something that may never come. Forgiveness does not mean permission. You can forgive and still block them. You can forgive and never speak again. You can forgive and keep a permanent distance. Forgiveness is closing the old door, not locked with resentment, but with understanding. And then you throw the key into the ocean, never letting them in again. Forgiveness is the final message you send to yourself. I will no longer let the past hold me back. I will not feed hatred. I will not repeat this lesson a second time. Signs you've truly forgiven. You remember the past, but it no longer hurts. You can mention their name without your chest tightening. You don't wish them harm. You wish they'd vanish from your mind. You don't need them to fix anything because you already did that for yourself. If they come back, then what? They might apologize. They might change their tone. They might say they've thought things through. You smile. You stay calm. And you say, even if just in your mind, I have forgiven, but I won't return to the path that once made me lose myself. Forgiveness is the highest act of someone on a growth journey. It doesn't ask for agreement. It doesn't need a stage. It doesn't seek recognition. You only need one silent decision. I deserve to live with a lighter heart. But to keep that freedom, you need to set clear boundaries. Because forgiveness without limits is just an invitation for pain to return. In the next part, we'll talk about How to set psychological boundaries with a stoic spirit. No conflict, coldness, but profound clarity and strength. Building psychological boundaries. Not to fight, but to protect yourself. You can forgive. You can let go. You can release resentment. But if you have no boundaries, you'll get hurt again. Forgiveness is freeing your soul from the past. Boundaries are protecting your future from being repeated. A boundary isn't a wall, it's a controlled gate. The Stoic doesn't build walls to shut out the world. They build psychological gates to choose who gets to enter and who doesn't. You don't need to cut everyone off. You must learn not to open the door to those who once damaged your inner space. It's not coldness, it's clarity. Saying no doesn't make you a bad person. Keeping your distance doesn't make you heartless. Refusing to reconnect with someone who hurt you doesn't mean you haven't forgiven them. It simply means you've grown. You've learned how to reset the boundary so you don't have to learn the same lesson again. Every time you say, "I'm fine," when you're hurt, you tear down your boundaries, and that leads to emotional intrusion. You begin letting others define you. You settle for less than you're worth to keep a connection. The Stoic doesn't do that. They love with moderation, they give selectively, and they don't let kindness become a weakness. Boundaries aren't distance, they're depth of self-respect. The more you understand your value, the more gently, yet firmly, you set your limits. I can listen to you, but I won't let your words hurt me. I can forgive, but I won't let you repeat the same behavior. I can be kind, but I won't let anyone take advantage of that. Seneca once wrote, "No one can make you feel inferior unless you hand them the power." And a boundary is how you take that power back. You don't owe an explanation. You don't owe an apology for protecting yourself. Signs of a healthy boundary. You know what doesn't feel right, and you speak it. You don't overreact, you calmly step back. You don't need others to validate your boundary. You don't wait for them to get it, establish the standard from the start. Not everyone who loses you will regret it, but you still have the right not to let them hurt you again. Don't confuse boundaries with punishment. You don't build fences to retaliate. You build them to protect your psychological safety, emotional stability, and self-respect. And no one deserves the right to hurt you twice, not even through silence. Once you have boundaries, the next important step is become the version of yourself they can no longer reach. Not just withdraw, but evolve. Not just disappear, but become untouchable by their negativity. In the next part, we'll dive into this powerful transformation. Self-worth, becoming the version they can't reach anymore. Someone who doesn't need revenge, because growth is the strongest response. Self-worth, becoming the version they can no longer touch. There's a quiet kind of revenge, no words, no precise gestures. It happens when you disappear from the emotional space of someone who once hurt you and become a version they no longer know how to reach. You don't need their regret. You need your growth. Most people who've been hurt hope for one thing. One day, they'll realize my worth. But the truth is, you don't need that. Because if you still need validation from someone who once belittled you, you're still placing your self-worth in their hands. The Stoic does not live to be recognized. They live to be aligned with their values. It's not about making them see, but becoming someone who doesn't need to be seen. Inner growth doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't need announcements. It doesn't need proof. It happens when you can. You are silent but at peace. You withdraw but without bitterness. You disappear but without turning yourself into a victim. You don't need them to see that you're doing well. You need to live a life where they no longer affect you. Location me to or part to get in problem. The market my people, you're building someone they can't hurt anymore. When you have true self-worth. You don't need to explain too much. You don't chase people who don't respond. You don't fall into emotional traps again. You don't need someone to see you're okay to be okay. You don't heal to be acknowledged. You heal to reclaim yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Hold yourself in dignity even when others have lost theirs." Others may betray, they may leave, they may deceive, they may dismiss your heart, but they can't do a thing if you're no longer the version they once had access to. You've changed, you've evolved. You're no longer easy to break. You're no longer quick to react. And most of all, You no longer need their presence to feel whole. The most powerful silent revenge is becoming someone they can't touch. Not because you're arrogant, but because you've risen to another level. A level where you no longer fight the old. A level where you're too focused on the road ahead to look back. A level where past pain no longer touches your present self. Signs you've become untouchable. You don't need to block them for peace. They already can't reach you inside. You no longer think, what if? You only think, I'm grateful I made it through. You don't need them to understand because you understand yourself enough. You don't try to prove you've changed because you genuinely have. Before you try to ask to, you're in vents. You're anyone that keeping yourself. It's not that you got revenge. You just stopped being someone they could hurt. And that's one of the most subtle, powerful, and lasting victories anyone can ever achieve. You don't need to win against someone. You need to become someone they can never hurt again. So when you've gained self-mastery, let go, forgive, and rebuild a new version of yourself. Whether using our polis, comply, far abating. In this business that you did not work, do you still need to say anything to them? The answer is no, because what comes next, silence, will say everything. In the next part, we'll explore one of the most potent breakthrough responses a person can have, silence, and why in a world full of noise, it's the loudest voice of inner strength. Silent but strong, the highest form of revenge. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to send a long message. You don't need to post a cryptic status. You don't need to try to show anyone that you're doing well. The highest form of revenge is not needing revenge at all. Just stay calm and disappear from the storm they created. Silence is what confuses them, and that's how they lose control. The one who hurt you may be waiting for a reaction, an explosion, a complaint, a meltdown. But when nothing happens, when you go silent, when you pull back, when you disappear from their emotional orbit, they get confused, they lose power, they lose their grip. The Stoic doesn't wage war, they quietly leave the battlefield. Your silence isn't weakness, it's the highest strategy when you realize, I don't need to play this emotional game anymore. I don't need to be right. I need peace. Silence, used at the right moment, is the most straightforward answer to anything that doesn't deserve your energy. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Choose silence when words no longer bring peace." Silence is a form of language, but it's not for others to understand. It's for you to keep your mind from being swept away. When they expect a reaction and you give silence, you've already won. They think you're weak. You stay silent. They think you're playing games. You stay silent. They think you'll break down. You keep living, keep growing, keep evolving. And that's the strongest response of all. No words, no drama, no proof needed. Just evolution that they'll never get to witness up close. This is not revenge. This is rising above. You didn't destroy anyone. You chose to stop letting them exist in your inner world. You've changed, not to make them regret, but because you deserve a stronger version of yourself. Your silence isn't a weak ending. It's the dignified close of an old chapter and the peaceful beginning of a new one. Now you no longer react impulsively. You've learned to let go, forgive, set boundaries, and rebuild yourself. You've mastered how to break others, not through action, but through your peace. In the final part, we'll wrap up this journey and reflect on the most essential truth. You don't need to be understood. You need to be free. You don't need applause, you need peace. And you don't need to win over others, you must master yourself. The final reflection, 10 steps to silent revenge. We've just walked a path that isn't meant for the faint of heart, a journey of healing, not through rage, but through dignity. Here are the 10 steps a strong soul chooses to walk out of the darkness. 1. Acknowledging the pain. You don't deny the wound. You face it with clarity, without rejecting the emotion. 2. Choosing response over reaction. You don't let impulse lead. You pause, then respond with reason. 3. Letting go of anger. Not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. 4. Forgiving yourself. No more blaming for trusting, loving, or being soft. 5. Setting boundaries. You say no, not out of hate, but because you've learned what no longer fits. 6. Rebuilding yourself. You come back, not as who you were, but as someone stronger, deeper. 7. Owning your worth. You don't chase validation. You walk rooted in values that come from within. 8. Becoming untouchable. They may still be who they are, but you're no longer who you used to be. 9. Choosing silence as your answer. No words speak louder than the calm of a mature mind. 10. Living in peace. Your final declaration. You don't need to hurt anyone. You need to live free with complete self-mastery. This isn't just an emotional recovery process. It's a stoic rebirth, a healing, a resurrection, a quiet walk forward, as if you were never broken. If you've made it this far, if you've carried silent wounds no one saw, if you're choosing peace over payback, then know this: you are not alone. There are thousands out there holding their pain in silence. And sometimes, all it takes is the right message at the right moment to turn someone's life around. Share this video with someone who's quietly hurting. You might not save them today, but you can plant a seed. And if you're on the path of rebuilding your strength, learning discipline, mental clarity, and stoic emotional control, then Sovereign Stoic is the place for you. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because this journey to inner mastery was never meant to be walked alone. Here, we won't teach you how to get revenge. We'll walk with you until you become someone who no longer needs it. Because true strength isn't in the loudest voice, it's in the calmest mind.